In my last video, we looked at factoring basic algebraic expressions. Some of those were in the form ax squared plus bx. So ax squared plus bx. These are quadratic expressions and can often form part of a quadratic equation. An example of one of these might be 2x squared plus 4x. If we wanted to factor this, like in the last video, we would take the highest common factor of numbers and then the x's out front. So taking out the highest common factor of 2 and 4, that's 2. The highest common factor of x squared and x is just x to the first power. That would leave us now requiring an x plus 2. That is now factored. In this video, we're going to look at factoring quadratics in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. This is the form we write them in. An example of this might be x squared minus 2x minus 8. This time we've got a constant. A constant is a term with no x in. So in this particular case, a is 1, b is minus 2, and c is minus 8. ax squared plus bx plus c. In this video, we're going to look at how we factor these and some of the rules that we need to play by. In the video, we're going to look at all cases when a is 1. If you want examples where a is not 1, please check out my site here. Okay, let's start then. We're asked to factorise x squared plus 4x plus 3. This is in the correct form. It's in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. In this particular case, the a is 1, the b is positive 4, and the c is positive 3. When we factorise quadratics in this form, we look for two numbers that multiply to give the c term and the same two numbers that add to give the b term. So the way we can do this is to look at the factors of positive 3. The factors of positive 3 are 1 times 3 or 3 times 1. So we can see quite clearly two numbers that multiply to give positive 3 and add to give positive 4 are 1 and 3. All we need to do now is set up some brackets. In the front of each bracket we put an x, and then in the back of the brackets we put plus 1 and plus 3. That is now factored. So if you're asked to factor x squared plus 4x plus 3, you put it into two brackets. We find two numbers and multiply to give the c term, and the same two numbers that add to give the b term. If this number is positive, then the two numbers that we're looking for are either going to be both be positive or both be negative. Positive times positive gives positive, and negative multiplied by negative is going to give a positive. So if we look at this example here, this is a negative. That tells me that one of the numbers is going to be positive and one's going to be negative. This one's negative, so it tells me one of the numbers is going to be positive and one's going to be negative. So let's go to this one. X squared plus 4x plus 4. It's in the correct form, ax squared plus bx plus c. So x squared, x, no x. We need two numbers that multiply to give 4 and add to give 4. If we think about the factors of 4, we can have 1 times 4 or 2 multiplied by 2. This number is positive and this one is, which means that we're going to have the 2 multiplied by 2. So what we're going to have then is x plus 2, and then we're going to have x plus 2. And of course you could write this as x plus 2 all squared. X plus 2 all squared is just x plus 2, x plus 2. Let's look at this one. We need two numbers that multiply to give 7 and add to give 8. That's going to give me x plus 1, and then we're going to have x plus 7. 1 times by 7 gives me 7, 1 plus 7 gives me 8. It doesn't matter if you write this now as x plus 7 and then x plus 1. That's perfectly fine. These two things are identical. The only issue about swapping these over is if we had a plus and a minus. So for example, if you had x minus 1, x plus 7, and instead you swap the plus and the minus over, that's not going to work. Okay, let's look at the next one. It's in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. We need two numbers that multiply to give this c term. So we need two numbers that multiply to give positive 10 and add to give positive 7. 1 times by 10, 2 times by 5. These are the factors of 10. Quite clearly, we need these ones right here. 2 plus 5 is 7, 2 times 5 is 10. So we get x plus 2, and then we get x plus 5. That's now factored. This one here, x squared plus 7x plus 12. We need two numbers that multiply to give 12 and add to give 7. Again, if you don't spot them, you can do 1 times 12, 2 times by 6, 3 times by 4, and we're back on ourselves. So the factors are 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 and 12. We want two numbers that multiply to give positive 12 and add to give positive 7. Quite clearly, it's going to be plus 3 and plus 4. So x plus 3, and then we can have x plus 4. And that gives us what we want. This one here, if you don't spot it, we can do 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times by 10. We can't do 4 times anything to give us 30, but we can do 5 times 6. As we can see from here, 5 times by 6 gives us 30, 5 plus 6 will give us 11. So we get x plus 5 and then x plus 6, and that is now factored. Okay, this time we have a negative on the end. If we have a negative, one of the factors now we're going to have x plus something and x minus something. So what we want is two numbers that multiply to give minus 3 and add to give positive 2. So if we consider, it's going to be 1 and 3. These are going to give me the factors of 3. We want this to be positive. So if I make this minus 1, when we add these we're going to get positive 2. When we multiply them we're going to get minus 3. So this one we'd have x minus 1 and then x plus 3. You can't have x plus 1 and x minus 3. If you expand that out, you'll see that these are going to be different. So if we expand this out, we get x squared, then we're going to have minus x, then we're going to have plus 3x minus 3. Yet if you expand this one out, you're going to get x squared plus x minus 3x minus 3. And you can see that these are going to be different. So it's important that we play by the rules and choose the correct one. This is the correct one, because when we tidy that up, it will give us a positive 2. Okay, let's look at this one right here. This one isn't actually going to factor at all. I'm not sure quite why we've been given it and asked to factor it. It won't factor. We need two numbers that multiply to give now on here positive 3. So that means that are either both going to be negative or both be positive, and that's not going to work. So it's obviously an error. If this was minus 3, we'd end up with this scenario right here. Okay, let's look at this one right here. What we've got then is x squared plus 4x minus 5. We need two numbers that multiply to give minus 5 and add to give 4. So if we think about 1 times 5, we want this to be negative. Now we want this to be a positive 4. So if I make this minus 1 and plus 5, we're going to have x minus 1 and then x plus 5. If we expand that out, we're going to get x squared. Then we're going to get to now minus x plus 5x and minus 5. So that is now factored. Don't be tempted to say x plus 1 and then x minus 5. If that was the case, this right here would end up being a negative, and that's not what we've got. Okay, let's look at this one. Two numbers that multiply to give negative 8 and add to give negative 2. Well, if we think about 1 times 8, 2 times by 4, these are the factors of 8. We want now, this is negative, so one of them's got to be negative. We want to make two numbers added to give us minus 2. If I make this one now plus 2 and minus 4, we're going to have x plus 2 and then x minus 4. That will give us exactly what we want. If it was the other way around and this was a plus, we'd have x minus 2 and x plus 4. So that's factored. Two numbers that give us minus 15 when multiplied and add to give now minus 2. If we consider 15, we could have 1 times by 15, 3 times by 5. Nothing else is going to work. So if we consider we want minus 2, if we make this a plus and that a minus, that's going to give us minus 2 when we add it. So x plus 3, and then we're going to have x minus 5. If we expand that out, we'll get x squared minus 2x minus 15. This one right here, these ones cause people hassle because we've just got this minus x. Remember, that's minus 1x. If we think about the factors of 12, 1 times 12, 2 times 6, and 3 multiplied by 4. This is going to give us a minus 1 when we add these two together. So if I make that plus 3 and that minus 4, when I add those, it's going to give me minus 1. So we can say x plus 3 and then x minus 4. If you're unsure, just expand it. X times by x, x times by minus 4x, plus 3x minus 12. So there we go. Just be careful on those ones. Often happens with the 6 as well. X squared minus x minus 6 is going to give us now plus 2 and minus 3. Right, let's look at this one right here. We want two numbers that multiply to give positive 24 and add to give minus 10. So let's see what we can do with this one now. What we're going to have then, if we look at this, we can have 1 times by 24. We can have 2 times by 12, 3 times by 8, 4 times by 6. Now, for this to be positive, they've either got to both be positive or both be negative. The fact that this is negative means that they're both going to be negative. If we take minus 4 and minus 6, x minus 4, and then we're going to have x minus 6. When we expand this out, minus 4 times by minus 6 is positive 24, and when we add them, we get minus 10. This one right here, we've got a positive on the end and a negative in the middle. If we consider now two numbers that multiply to give positive 15 and add to give minus 8, that's going to be x minus 3 and then x minus 5. After a while, you'll just spot them. If you still can't, that's fine. 1 times 15, then we'd have 3 times by 5. We can see this is positive, so we need to make both of these negative and add them. Okay, this one you might have spotted already. Positive number on the end, negative in here. So what we can look at now are the factors of 28, or you could go just straight for it. 1 times 28, 2 times by 14. Then we can have 4 multiplied by 7. Quite clearly, this is going to be negative 4, that's going to be negative 7. When I add these, I get negative 11. When I multiply them, I get positive 28. So x minus 4, and then we're going to have x minus 7. So this is factoring. Sometimes you'll be asked to solve them. So if this was set to equal to 0 and you're asked to solve, all you've got to do is set this to 0, and you can say to yourself, either x minus 4 is equal to 0 or x minus 7 is equal to 0. If x minus 4 is equal to 0, then x is equal to 4. If x minus 7 is equal to 0, then x is 7. We'll do a video on solving equations. At the moment, we're just looking at factoring them. So this is an example of solving an equation by factoring. But remember, these are just algebraic expressions. It only becomes an equation if you have an equal sign in there. So there we go, brief intro into factoring quadratics in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, where the value of a is just 1.